Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk about how can I start learning Kubernetes? And this is a very common question I get when I talk to people. And when I especially talk to people who wants to learn something on Kubernetes but don't know where to start from, mainly because they don't work on Kubernetes. Their day-to-day work doesn't involve Kubernetes, but because Kubernetes is something which is happening around, they also feel interested. And that's how we learn new things. Okay. So this session is definitely not for somebody who already knows and works on Kubernetes. This is mainly targeted for people who are willing to learn Kubernetes but just don't know where to start from. So we'll categorize the mode of learning in two different categories. So let's try to simplify this. You have the first category when you have internet. Now, one of the first primary things you need is a machine. So we'll guess that you already have a machine. A simple laptop will work with a minimal configuration and should be able to run things in a peaceful manner. If you do not have an internet, then you need a local setup. Now, one of the recommended ways to learn Kubernetes is to use Linux operating systems. So you can go ahead with any free Linux version like Ubuntu, and you can download Ubuntu from web and install it in your laptop, and it becomes an Ubuntu machine. Ubuntu gives you the user interface and the command prompt. Inside the command prompt, where you need a couple of installation, and they are all documented in the Kubernetes official portal. And the thing which we use is Minikube. Now, Minikube is a cluster for Kubernetes practices. Okay, so this is the local. This is no internet. And this is with internet. Now, when you have internet, let me show you that option. But before I go into that, let's put this as number one, and this is number two. Okay, so let's see what is there in number one. What we'll do now, we'll go to the Linux portal, Ubuntu portal. Let me bring it up here. And then I say ubuntu.com, and I'll definitely get a link to download the Ubuntu desktop. So you have the download option available. And if you click on this download option, you will see that we have Ubuntu desktop and server download option available. So if you haven't done that and you do not have that Ubuntu machine, I recommend that you should go ahead and do that. Okay. Once you have that Ubuntu machine, either desktop or server, right, you will be able to run Minikube inside. Now, where do you find Minikube? Minikube is available in Kubernetes documentation or Kubernetes portal. And the URL of the Kubernetes portal is kubernetes.io. Okay, so if you just search with the Kubernetes in any search engine, you will find this portal URL. It's a common portal. And this is the Bible for you, the book you need to use every day. Okay, I recommend that you rely on learning Kubernetes from its own official live documentation rather than learning it from something like a book, because you need to be careful about how long ago that book has been written. So if it is written a very, very long ago, then things might not work what is written in the book, right? So you should and must always refer this documentation. Books are mainly good for architectural patterns and the best practices and experiences people have gained during the Kubernetes deployment, large scale Kubernetes deployment. But for basic learning, to start learning something, you must rely on documentation. It's a damn good documentation available here. Now you see that it has a section called documentation. So you go over here in the documentation section, and then you type in the search command bar, you type with like Minikube. Now that's the Minikube installation guide which we're gonna get from the Kubernetes documentation search. So I always search from Kubernetes documentation rather than going into any other search engine and searching for it because it can fetch you result pretty effectively. Now you can see that the Minikube has got a couple of requirements, right? So what you see here, and then the installation steps for many different operating system. Minikube installation supports Windows as well. So I said that I prefer Linux over Windows because Linux is pretty simple and easy to use. Windows works, but you need to have certain hardware configuration to be able to run that. So make sure that you have them. But otherwise, with a nominal simple laptop, you can use the Ubuntu. Headless Ubuntu also is fine because it's lightweight. You'll be able to use the Minikube over there. And then you can see that this gives you the pretty much everything, the step by step. So you don't need to really worry and learn anything or by heart or anything like that because it's just no use for production. So you should not be memorizing or spending or putting an effort on installing and mastering and installing Minikube. Follow the documentation and you should be able to actually get it working as I could without knowing about it. So you can see that it also gives you some tips about how you can run, create, and you can test using these commands. So that's the Minikube part of the story. We'll come back to the online part. Now, Kubernetes does gives you something like a Kubernetes playground. Now that's what how you set up the Kubernetes in your local machine and then work in that so that you get the local experience. But Kubernetes is installable everywhere, not just your hardware, but also in the cloud, in somebody else's hardware, and you can access it through SSH. Right. So there are many different ways by which Kubernetes and Kubernetes installation takes time, right? So Minikube is just a single cluster deployment, but it should not take long time. But if you look into the Kubernetes, right, if you look into the actual Kubernetes installation, even if it is the easiest path, which is Kube ADM, there are few steps involved. So we'll not get into that installation part in the pretty beginning of our learning because that will actually take a lot of time because we don't understand the structure of the Kubernetes right now. We'll learn it and then we'll use our learning and experience to be able to deploy the Kubernetes cluster a later point in time. In fact, I have got a video on how you can do that in a virtual machine kind of setup. Now you can see that there are a couple of things available in this um, Kubernetes documentation. I will search with something called playground. Remember these keywords. So Kubernetes playground is a place where you can start learning Kubernetes just now. Okay, you don't need to set up anything. Your machine, your browser, and you are good to go. That's the model here, the Kubernetes playground. And if what I'm going to show you is the Karakoda, right? So if I click on the start scenario, you can see that it is basically launching the Kubernetes playground within this browser. Now, this is a small area. This might not be an effective way of doing that, but you can also try going into karakoda.com. Now, Karakoda is an O'Reilly product, which essentially gives you a cluster access via browser. So you will be able to see things in the browser, right? So I'll go to the learn, and then inside that, you have that playground. Kubernetes playground. Okay. So you can see that Kubernetes playground, and I start the scenario. What happens, the browser then opens this, and this is only available, right? You can sign up. Okay. So you sign up using any social credential, and this lab is available only for 10 minutes. Okay, that's the only drawback. I must say that it's not a long running environment. So if you need a long running environment, go and buy the environment from killer.sh or codecloud.com portal. They have nice Kubernetes playground with all setups done for you with scenarios. So if I say start scenario, right? What would happen is that it'll give you the this kind of interface, and this is this like your command prompt or the shells, right? And then you can say that for to launch the cluster, you need to run this sh file, the shell file, and that will actually initiate the Kubernetes for you to play with, right? And once setup is done, you can do a health check on the cluster info, understanding like how things are working, whether everything is done or not. Now, this is the easiest way, I must say. You don't have to spend anything on setting up or about Kubernetes. So you can say kube serial get nodes. If I do that, and then you can see that control plane node is not yet ready, right? And then you can see everything is showing up here. So in the node one, I'll say cube serial get nodes. So this says that it'll create a two-node Kubernetes cluster. So hopefully things will be available pretty soon, right? So you can see that it's now ready. So it takes some time to get ready. Now in this, I'll also see slowly the node one coming up. So if I run this command again, you can see the second node, that is node 01, is now ready. Now what I can do, I can try deploying a Kubernetes cluster. So I can say kubectl run web image in Nginx. So that will create an image from Nginx. That will create a pod from image Nginx. Now if I say kubectl get pod, and then it'll show you the container is getting created. Now, if I go into the watch mode, then you will see that container will be ready pretty soon while we're talking. Now, that's how you can start immediately working on Kubernetes, and you will be able to run any Kubernetes command, right? What you see in the documentation when you are learning. Let's say you want to learn how to create a pod, what I did just now, you can do that just copying that command and pasting it over here and doing it by yourself. So this will give you the full like freedom to start learning Kubernetes. And this is absolutely free. You don't have to pay anything to this Karakoda. You just need a machine and an internet connection, and that should be enough for you to start learning. So you can start learning Kubernetes now, today, and then evolve and explore whether this is really helpful. This is something you want to learn. This is something which you want to aspire for, because not every technology is important and required for everyone. So you choose wisely what is needed and important as per the career path